Is anyone saying anything? I'm hearing nothing. Ah, okay. I see. All right. Oh, okay. Okay, that's the reason why I'm hearing nothing, because Michael also isn't saying anything. All right. And you're muted. How awkward. Nice to meet you. Yeah, I'm actually I'm pretty bad in lip reading, so no idea what you're saying. Oh man. All right. So but we are already live, I see. So the burden is on me to entertain everyone who's watching the stream, right? All right. You see, I'm already wearing my funny hat. Um, Actually, because it's super cold here in Germany. We have like, I don't know. We all thought we would never get a winter this year. It has never been sub-zero, and in the last few days we have like 10 degrees sub-zero. I have no idea what it is in Fahrenheit, but it's cold. It's really cold, and we are living in an old, unisolated or uninsulated framework house, and it's cold. I have single sheet windows here, and I'm freezing, and I need to wear this in order to not to lose too much heat over my bald head. And it's yeah, that's the reason why I'm wearing the funny hat. So I had some troubles actually joining the stream because the link was somewhat corrupted with all those lines in the email. I had to copy the link into a text editor and erase the all the lines. I don't know what they called. Those, you kind of formatted it with those bottom lines, spaces, things. And if you clicked on the link, it was broken for me at last. And I had to copy the link into a text editor, fix it, and put it into the browser window, and then it worked for me. So maybe I'm not the only one having problems with the link. Maybe resend the email, perhaps. So I'm doing something very fun this evening. It's the last day of the month, and this is my time to go through all the little tickets from our expenses and put it all into an Excel table. And so it's some very artsy stuff that I'm doing tonight, bookkeeping, but important nonetheless. The link that you just resent looks good to me. So this should work for anyone who had troubles with the first email. All right. Oops.
Hey, I made it.
Oh, it's a sound. I'm hearing something.
That's me.
Oh, it's Doug. Hey, Doug.
Brother. Oh.
How are you?
I'm so good.
Yeah, I'm very cold. That's why I'm wearing a hat. I don't know. No, it's not called a hat. What's the right word for this? What I'm wearing?
You're calling from the thing, that North Pole, the thing.
It's super cold. It's super cold the last few days here, and we are living in an old framework house that's practically not insulated at all.
Yeah.
So it's a super house for the summer, but when the winter gets cold, man, I'm freezing.
You need those fingerless gloves.
Oh, I have I have one actually on my right hand, but that I'm wearing that all the time. Also, especially in summer because it's to prevent my hand from sticking on the tablet when it's sweating. So are you drawing some more earthworm gyms today? Oh yeah, I see.
Yeah, about 1 million.
Well, you can never have enough of those, right?
Yeah. My Kickstarter's got 5 hours left in it.
Yeah.
So it's going pretty good.
Cool. So your Kickstarter is running. Your Kickstarter is still live. I thought these were drawings for a Kickstarter that was already closed.
No, it's going right now.
Oh,
I'm
cool.
in the final stretch. But I know I have to do all of these.
Hello?
Get the camera. I want to look at where.
Good evening, or hello.
Hey, gentlemen. Those are some teeny earthworm gems.
Yeah, a bunch of little ones.
Cute.
I'm just watercoloring, so it's all going to look the same today. Is my camera working okay?
Looks great.
You can see it.
So wait, so Michael's on, right? Hello.
Yeah, but he might be on another conference call right at the moment.
Oh.
Might join at a later point.
So many conference calls.
I'm going to. Do you guys know what the link is for tweeting this out about where we're? About the fact that we're meeting.
Jason usually does that, so Celia has to do it. Celia has to do it.
It might just be us, just kind of out in the void. No, I'll bet you if I go to his channel, I can find it. Let's see here.
Yeah.
Well, how'd your week go, guys?
Cold. Very cold.
A lot of snow up there in Germany.
Yeah, it's cold. It's snowing. Actually, yeah, my studio is so cold. I had to wrap myself up today in a blanket, wearing the funny little hat. And I even had one of those, I don't know what it's called, like those rubber bottles you put water in. What's it called?
Hot water bottle.
Hot water bottle. All right, yeah, I had it under my feet.
I only see those in cartoons.
It's a little bit, ridiculous, but there was no other way for me today to get warm feet in my studio. It's just super cold.
Is there a warm part of Germany?
In a few days, the forecast says it will be pretty warm. So we all will die from...
Germany, Daniel? Is there a part that gets warm, like a southern part?
No, Germany is pretty small, you know. The south of Germany is closer to the Alps, so they are a little bit higher. So the south is normally colder because they are higher in the mountains.
I'm from California, so I have no grasp of geography outside of my country. Outside of my state.
Yeah, that's okay.
I'm ignorant of all geography.
No, we pretty much have all the same weather here in Germany. It's not like Chile, you know, where you can be at the equator in one part of the country and the other one is the North Pole, or the South Pole. Yeah. That's not happening here. You can drive by car through Germany in one day, in 9 hours.
Oh, okay.
So the longest distance from north to south, from west to east, it's even less.
Oh wow, that is small.
Yeah, it's like one of your smaller states, I guess.
All right, I tweeted it out. Now the world will know.
Wow.
Cool. Okay.
All right.
Hooray! Well, I'm happy to be here. I was looking forward to this.
Yeah, me
Daniel,
too.
Do you normally stay up till midnight, or are you just staying up just to talk to us?
I will actually leave a little bit earlier today because I think I'm grabbing a cold and I think some extra sleep would help me. So I will probably drop out in like an hour or something like that. Mm-hmm. I would really like to love to stay up until midnight every day because that's productive, very productive time for me. But since summer of last year, my older son is going to school, and we have to get up an hour earlier than we used to be, and now I have to go. I have to quit deliberately at like 11 p.m. just to get enough sleep to get up at 7 in the morning, which is really annoying because school is really the only reason we have to change our routine. We have to change what feels naturally to us, because my wife too is one of those night owl people, you know, and that's really annoying. I really hate it that institutions like school put this kind of pressure on us. But yeah, what are you gonna do? Kids have to go to school.
I used to be a night owl, and then now I get up at 4:30, and I have to be in bed by like 8:30 or 9.
Really?
That's so I can work. Yeah, I work out in the morning before the kids get up, and then I can help get them ready for school.
Yeah.
In the morning. But I used to be a night owl, and I just found it. I was a lot more productive when I went to bed earlier. So it's kind of a key. Those morning hours, man, my energy is so high, and I can pound stuff, get it out.
That's so weird. There's many people out there that describe this, and even Jason. Didn't Jason even have this period when he got up early, and also Jake Parker, I think.
Yeah.
All those people that get up early and work an hour or two in the morning before the school routine and stuff starts. I could never do that. If you would wake me up at 5 or 6 in the morning, I couldn't do anything. Yeah. I have changed my complete morning routine just to be able to get up at 7 and not before 7, because 7 is kind of the point where I think no one should ever get up earlier than 7. My big deal was in 2001 when I first did Creature Tech, my first comic.
my only goal was to be at my table working by 9 a.m. and I could barely do it. So that's when it started. I just kept going earlier and earlier. But I started at 9 a.m. was a big deal. Now it's 4:30.
Oh, God. Well, I mean, it's just a mirror image of those people that work late. I mean, in both cases, either working very early or very late, one thing is that you are not likely to be disturbed during those times.
Oh, yeah. No, it's pure.
That's a big plus for both approaches.
Hey, everybody.
And if I get my workout done early, then I feel like I've accomplished.
Michael.
That's all the physical exercise I get during the day. So I feel like I've got kind of all my physical exercise done, and then it's time for mental work.
Jason Shasteen from the chat. What's up, Mike? Jason Shasteen from the chat asks if homeschooling is very popular in Germany.
Not at all. Nobody's doing it. I personally don't know anyone who's doing it, because Germany is so small and settlements are so dense that you don't have you always have a school around the corner. I guess that in a bigger country like the US, homeschooling is done by people that just live out in, I don't know, Kansas, you know. and
we did homeschooling because our public schools are terrible. So Germany has way better test scores than we do on a worldwide scale. And our schools, they're kind of, if it's a bad performing school, then you're stuck there. So people started turning to homeschooling for educational reasons because the state schools were so bad.
And you can choose. You can choose to do homeschooling without any problems.
Mm-hmm. They try. The school unions are always trying to give them some trouble, but it's much more acceptable now over the last, I'd say, 10 or 15 years, because our charter schools, our new schools, and our non-government schools have performed so well that they couldn't deny it anymore.
I see. Yeah, because here in Germany, you would have to you would have to jump through a bunch of hoops, I think, to be able to do homeschooling, because you have to have very good reasons to do it.
Yeah.
I think if you are traveling a lot and taking your kids with you, you can do that. But if you're stationary and there's no real reason to do it, I think you are not allowed to do homeschooling.
Yeah.
And we homeschool our kids too, and we just like the flexibility with what we get to teach. And I don't mean that in like the ability to cut out certain philosophies, but more the idea of controlling the manner in which it gets taught. Like we choose curriculums that are heavy on reading and heavy on history and those sort of things. And you get a bit more control over things. And also you free your kids up to have more time to do other things. So like you can do piano and other extracurricular activities that they just get some more abilities to do. So it's, but I do agree with Doug in the sense that like the schools aren't super awesome either. I taught in a high school for 3 months, and that pretty well secured my belief that homeschool was the way to go for my family. Because it's a nightmare. The bureaucracy involved is a nightmare. The kind of nonsense the kids are facing. I mean, not to go full politicized, but we had the shooting in Florida 2 weeks ago. I had 4 gun incidents in the 3 months I taught at that school.
Wow.
We had multiple classroom lockdowns where I had to lock up the room and protect the kids from a potential shooter. And so
where was that
I came home every day stressed out of my mind. This is in Jacksonville, Florida, so Duval County.
Oh, okay.
And the school that I taught at wasn't it was a rough school, like, in general, But I literally would leave every day just rattled with anxiety because it was just something always, you know, and it was stuff that you felt like you shouldn't have to deal with as an educator and the kids shouldn't have to deal with as kids trying to just go to school, you know. And so eventually I was just like, this is just not for me, you know. So I eventually just, you know, left pretty quickly. It was a bummer because they were good. There was a lot of really good kids there. And they just happened to deal with a lot of nonsense.
Yeah, it's it's actually hard to not jump on that topic because it's big in European media too. You know, it's basically nobody over here can understand how this stuff can happen at all. It's absolutely unimaginable things like that happening here.
It's on
in
the
Europe.
rise. It's on the rise because it's part of our culture now.
Yeah.
Now, if you're a wacko, you've been trained by media that this is how you get attention and this is how you go out in a blaze of glory.
Now, thankfully, you know, if I were to put any sort of context around the events I went under, they were very small, sort of isolated events. It was, you know, a kid just was found with a weapon, or some of our students, I think, had done something outside of the school and were coming back to the school. So we knew that those kids had weapons and they were locking up the school just as a precautionary thing. We never had anything like an active shooter inside the school or something, but it's still a very disconcerting thing. I'm teaching art and I'm talking to my kids and, you know, all of a sudden something comes over the intercom, letting the whole school know, lock down, you know, lock your doors, put the paper up, get in the back of the room. And that's a very scary thing to go through. And you've got all these kids, and I had big classrooms, like 40 plus students. And I'm sitting here going, we're all in this together, you know, and trying to feel it's scary, man. And so I don't know. Yeah. It's tough.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's something that is not so easy to solve because it's all wrapped in cultural circumstances that are not easily changed.
Yeah, it's extremely cultural. There were none of these before. You know, it was very rare before the Columbine shooting in the late 90s was the big one. And then suddenly, you know, they're showing up everywhere and at greater frequency now. That's kind of, and that's a bad sign too. We're watching all the TV. It's become almost our entertainment now. And it's really bad. But, you know, that kind of shooting is just one sign of the way schools, they operate under a different culture than many of our families do. And so in America, we want the families to kind of hold reign over the kids' belief system and the methods that we used to teach them anything. And so if you're in a poor performing school, because I know that Europe, they'll get rid of bad teachers. And in America, you can't get rid of a bad teacher. Like they're locked in, you're stuck with them.
So we're in schools like I was teaching at, you couldn't get the good teachers to come to the school because they didn't want to deal with the nonsense. And so it was full of first year teachers who, you know, we're trying to figure out how to manage a classroom, let alone some of the nonsense that's happening. It's tough. And a lot of the problem with it is like, I don't even like discussing the particulars of it with people because everyone is so entrenched in their ideas and of how to fix it that there's not really meaningful conversation about compromise or, you know, it's just sort of like, well, you're wrong and you're wrong. And it's like, meanwhile, the kids are caught in the middle of this whole mess, you know. It's kind of depressing to watch it all happen, you know, regardless, I think, of whatever your viewpoints are. It's hard to have it happen all, you know.
Yeah. And even that polarization is part of our culture now. We're more polarized not than we've ever been. I'm sure we've been this kind of polarized before, but that too is cultural. The idea of that we're not going to, you know, we're going to go straight to our battlegrounds, and everyone draws up sides. Everyone knows what side they're on now.
Yeah. And so there's really no discussion happening. It's just everyone yelling at one another.
Yep.
And it's exhausting. And I love discussing these sorts of topics with people. Like if we were all, if we weren't necessarily even on the internet having this discussion, we were all sitting around and we were all being respectful, I'd really enjoy it. But usually, like if you post that on Facebook, and I know, Doug, I've seen you get political on there too. It's just like, just a blow up of people yelling at everybody. And it's like, geez, all right, fine. So I've had to learn to back away and just stop posting that sort of stuff. I'm like, there's not really good conversation happening here.
Yeah, I see that happening a lot with people who are softer spoken or more nuanced. They just get out of the conversation. And then there's all these radicals on both sides and just lobbing bombs at each other. And
pretty much.
That got old.
Mm-hmm. And it's like maybe the good byproduct of all this is I keep seeing people say, like, I need less social media. I'm like, maybe we all stop becoming obsessed with social media.
Yeah.
Like,
this could be good.
That could be a good outcome.
I haven't watched TV in 2 weeks.
Right? You haven't watched TV in 2 weeks?
I have not. I can't watch TV for the last 2 weeks. Ever since the shooting, I'm like, nope.
Oh, yeah.
I was watching the Olympics for a great distraction, and then I just don't watch it, which is good for work.
Right. I was working before I got the teaching job, I worked in the local news television. I worked for NBC, ABC. I was one of their film editors.
My.
And so the funny part of this whole story is that was the job I had. And then I got the job teaching. And then the day I got the job teaching, I was running the 5 o'clock show, got into work, and the headline story was kid arrested with gun in classroom. And it was the school I just got the job teaching at. So that was an omen of things to come. And it must have happened within 30 minutes of me accepting the position because it was all very close to one another in time. Oh. And so like when I left TV and I left teaching, it was like I unplugged from almost all of it. And I just like, I don't, it's all depressing to me. I can't watch the news. And I've stayed fairly uninvolved in a lot of political stuff for a little while because it was exhausting.
Yeah.
And now
I did it after the election. I largely unplugged. After the election, like all my friends in animation were going completely unglued, and it actually hurts me to see it, to see people that distraught. And I'm trying to take them seriously, but I'm just kind of going, man. I know we're not going to have a debate, I guess.
So. I don't know if y'all know about this, but this sort of changed a lot of things for me. Did you know you can mute words in Twitter?
Oh, I didn't know that.
Really?
Yes, it's amazing. So Mike Mayhack told me about this, and I guess you're from someone else. But if you go in there and if you don't want to see the gun control debate, put in your muted words, gun control. And it will just filter every one of those, any tweet that directly references that will get taken out of your timeline. So that's sort of been helpful in me enjoying the medium again because I'm interested in those conversations. I'm not interested in going to Twitter and watching everyone yell at each other about it and demonize every person who doesn't share your opinion. And so it's sort of redeemed Twitter for me because I can actually go and just like see artwork I like and talk to people about other things I want to enjoy.
Super nice.
So if you weren't aware of it and you would like to do that, you can mute words and phrases.
I've been off social media in large part for the past year and a half or so. And it's been really great. I had this realization that like the social media, like it feels free, but it's not. And they're literally making money off of your attention. So it's a device built to garner attention, which is as a cartoonist and a creative person, that's my greatest resource, is my focus.
Yeah.
And so it's been awesome. But now as my book's coming out, I'm like, oh dang, I gotta go hustle and get some, talk to people about my book and about what I'm doing, and I gotta be in the conversation again. So I'm grudgingly heading back in, and yesterday I got subscription to this big social media client where you kind of hook all your social media together into this one monster social media and start publishing all this stuff automatically and all this other stuff. So I'm building a machine to try to wade back in, but yeah, it's kind of grudgingly. If I had a choice, I would be a silent kind of person who lives on a hill somewhere, a hermit guy.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is that you can use social media actually without really using it yourself, if your self-discipline is high enough, I would say. Because in days when online forums were the big thing, it wouldn't work to just post your stuff and never react to anyone else, because people knew each other basically.
Yeah.
And someone who was only sending and never responding to anything would you would stick out. But in social media, the amount of people that you're potentially posting to, they never know how active you are yourself. So you can use social media just for sending stuff and block out the receiving completely, theoretically.
Yeah.
But I think the very bad thing about social media is that it's actually, the design of it exploits some weaknesses in human psychology, much like some computer. And this is really something that concerns me a lot, because they
mine your information, they mine your thoughts, and they mine your beliefs, and then sell them off, and then reconnect you with people who are most likely to trigger your beliefs and your information, including opponents. Like it's made for. It's evil. It really
it's smart business, but
on the weakest parts of our culture.
It's like it's smart business, but socially, it's pretty deadly. You know,
it's not even. I feel like it's not even smart. I mean, it is. It's just the way things have grown, and like. So I don't know where I read this, but or heard this, but like, do you know how much you would have to pay to have ad-free Facebook for a year? I think it's only something like only like $11. Like they only make like $11 off of you a year using advertising. It's really well, I guess ad blocker helps, but you know what I mean? Like it's we're saying like, oh, I'd rather have the free thing, and we could have, you know, a Facebook without ads if it was a subscription service for pretty dang cheap. But I think something, again, when this comes back to in psychology, we have a very hard time seeing the drawbacks or the negatives of something, and an easy time seeing the positives. So they're like, hey, here's a free thing. You want it? Like, oh yeah, of course.
Right.
And then we miss like what the invisible costs are. It kind of goes under the radar for us. But yeah, I mean, there is a conceivable world where we don't have, you know, social media sites that are like mining all of our data, and you know, we just pay for the service or whatever. But yeah.
Yeah, I don't like that Vero, man. I have all these followers on my Doug TenNapel page on Facebook, and I'll put up a killer post, and it'll say, this post was very effective. And it goes, pay this to boost more. I'm going like, wait, you mean all my people who signed up to my page don't get to see it because I'm not paying enough?
Yeah.
That's the thing that I resented, was these people, there's kind of a thought that they're going to get to see everything, and they don't get to see it. Or it's not sent to them unless you pay extra for it.
That was the day when Facebook went evil, when they started to prune your timeline.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, that's where I'm like, I have all these friends on here, and I I'm assuming most of them are fairly active, but why do I never see them too? Like even just your personal feed, I think it curates a lot of who you do and don't talk
like
to
my
there
close
as well.
relatives. It weeds out my close relatives.
Really? That's odd.
Yeah.
That's surprising.
And the one guy that like comments on everything that I do, like I get that feed, you know, that guy who maybe I don't want to hear from so much.
Right. So I was hoping we might have had Kazu on here because Doug, I wanted to get yours. I'm going to dramatically change topics unless y'all want to continue that in this one. I'm sorry.
No.
But I wanted to get your take on this, and I've kind of asked Kazu about it in the past too. But I'm wondering your thoughts on this. So, finished Adamsville, done with it, working on the next project. Wondered what the process would look like for you. Like if you were in my shoes, you self-published a series, you've never had traditional publishing experience, and you're going to go pitch a new book. What would I know like the agent process or whatever, but like what would you do as far as beginning that pitching process? Like how much of a comic would you have ready? Would you try to do the whole thing basically? Would you do just a portion?
I always do the whole thing. I'm
thinking through all this.
I always do the whole thing. That's just an internal rule of mine because
Mm-hmm.
I don't want a publisher or a market to ultimately decide if I'm going to do a project or not because they're so involved and you really got to you either believe in it or you don't. And I've never had a problem finding a publisher.
Yeah.
Kazu's different. You know, he's a New York Times bestseller, so I think he could go in and just with the pitch. I might be able to also, but I always feel like I'm scamming someone if I don't put enough evidence out there. So I tend to provide too much material for pitches. But most artists, they don't have to, but man, for an up and comer, I would definitely recommend doing too much as opposed to too little. Unless you're willing to bail on the whole project. Like if you can't get a publisher, would you bail on it?
Yeah. That's sort of and I'm debating through that. Like right now, the plan I've got, I've kind of been having very informal conversations with an agent I met at ALA a few years ago. And sort of what he wants to see from me is just like 30 pages of pencils, a synopsis, and like a general idea of, you know, here's what the book's going to look like. And so like what I've been trying to think of is like, let's do what he asks, see if I can get him on board or another agent on board. And then I sort of want to make a decision on my own, like you said, of like I'm going to make it or I'm not going to make it, regardless of whether we get a deal.
And I'm saying if you're doing 30 pages of pencils, you're going to do the book, right?
Yeah, that's what I agree. Like, why would I waste do 30 pages of pencils and not finish it? Like,
yeah, so you're doing the book.
Yes, but I also like it feels like the pitching process takes so long that what I feel like probably makes sense would be to like do the 30 pages, do the pitch, and then like if this agent's like, yes, let's go do it. So let's say he wants to go represent it. He starts pitching it around. While that process is happening, it feels like it would still make a lot of sense to keep rolling, even if it's just writing the whole book out. So that if an editor came in, then I can say, well, here's a finished script, and you can read it, and then we can discuss that. And
I don't know how
any changes y'all may want to make.
I don't know how you pencil 30 pages without having a script. How do you know to start a story unless it's any good? And how do you know if it's any good until you get to the end?
I've got I guess I'm a treatment writer, so I've written. What I've got so far is I've written the whole treatment. I've got 4-page document, kind of beat by beat how we get there.
Yeah. And
then I'm basically going to pencil the first all the way up to kind of the catalyst moment of the story, and that's going to be my sort of pitch document. And then I would just continue writing the rest.
This comes from my work in Hollywood. I always assume that the readers are too lazy to actually read my whole script, but they will read a whole comic, because they can do it in an afternoon.
Right.
So, and that's how I've been able to sell my comic deals as graphic novels, but never as a script. And that scares me. I don't want to leave anything off the table that will help get that thing done. So I feel like if I do a skinny pitch and get turned down, I'll always go, well, what if I just gave them a little more information? Would I have gotten it?
Yeah. With you.
That's my own paranoia at work, but that really is how I think. And then if worse came to worse, if someone didn't publish it, I'd put it online because the story will have been done.
Yeah.
And there's enough business there that even that can work. So you don't, even a publisher can't stop you from telling a story that you really believe in, and you really believe in it if you're willing to put 6 months into it. And I'm sorry, but some agent who may not be the most intelligent soul in the world really shouldn't stop you from doing a story that you really believe in.
Yeah.
You don't want to give them that much power over your content. So I just finished, for example, I just finished Jacobot and sent it to Scholastic. The whole book, lettered, 210 pages, inked and lettered. It's, you know, and I have my colorist Catherine do 11 pages of fully colored samples, and we've been going back and forth now for over a year on this book. And then they just asked me again, like, can you resend that email with the pitch in it? I go, oh, yeah, okay. You didn't have that. So I'm very happy when I don't put that much control of my whole life on editors and agents. And I've never sent something to my agent for approval to see if I'm going to do it or not. My agents rep my book, no matter how good or bad it is. They take.
The experience I had pitching Adamsville the first time was pretty.
I don't know anyone else who works that way, by the way. But well, it's sure done well for me.
Well, actually, hearing you say that was a big reason why I kind of approached Adamsville the way I did in the beginning, was because I went through that because this was, I mean that literally. Like, I remember watching interviews with you like 6 years ago and going like, I should just go make this book. And because when I first pitched Adamsville to publishers, it took a year to get all the no's back. And so by that point, I think we even talked about this briefly. By that point, I had wasted a year of my life on a pitch and had nothing to show for it. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to make it anyway. So I'm definitely in the camp of like, I'm going to make it one way or the other. But I think the part of me that's sort of like, is there a balance that kind of mingles, like, I'm going to make it no matter what, but also I understand this process takes forever, so might as well get the ball rolling as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
And, you know, whatever I can do to make that work.
If you're pitching it, you could have gotten that book done and been on your next book.
That's true too.
That's how I see it. I'm 51 and I don't have many years left on the earth. So I'm trying to do at least 20 graphic novels before I die, and I'm not going to get there waiting on publishers. I got to get these stories out.
Yeah. So
I got to do the story, and then I'm pretty confident they're going to go for it. And I have two publishers I like, Image and Scholastic, that will publish my work. And if either of them said no, I could always go to First Second or someone else, and if they said no, I would just put it out online. And what's the fault in that? I'd probably get a fine readership, and you've seen lots of success even with that model, not for me, but for others.
It's just I've seen so many different ways of how people get there. It doesn't feel, and especially within comics, because they know, like, at least with the agent I was talking to, he sort of was like, hey, you know, his experience has been that the publishers are fine with seeing a pitch because they know the art takes so long.
Yeah.
That they're either going to respond to that pitch or they're not. And, you know, having the rest of it is or isn't helpful. But I agree with you in the sense of like, well, if you're leaning on that pitch, you've wasted a lot of time and you could have just been making it anyway. And I feel like maybe that's that balance of like, yeah, you know, if I'm fortunate enough to get an agent and a publisher who's interested in the idea, then I'll keep working on it. I'm not going to stop working on it.
Yeah.
But if I don't, I won't stop working on it anyway. But at least maybe I can get some interested parties in early enough in it that we get the business part of it out of the way, and I can just go have that squared up while I'm doing the creative end.
Yeah, well. That'd be great. Or pitch multiple projects and work on multiples.
Yeah.
I see all these stories very different. Like, none of them are precious. I see them in terms of, I've got 20 graphic novels, so I've got 20 stories. So even if I'm pitching one, I've got two others that I've done some development on. And but one of them I'm going to be working on every day, and the other ones I'm just going to be kind of dotting at across over the years. But there's books that I've done that just if I didn't finish them, I don't think a publisher would have been interested in Black Cherry or Flink or Earthboy Jacobus.
That's one of my favorite ones. But I can see how it'd be really hard to pitch.
Yeah, it'd be impossible. Like, it's so high concept and weird, and I'd almost talk myself out of it at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So
I don't know.
I come out from a different point of view. I'm very, very strong-willed about when it's time for a story to go out, I'm going to finish it, and that's just me. And
do you find that it sounds like you're involving colorists early on. So what about like the angle of, are you hiring colorists early on, whether it gets a publisher or not, or would you look at it and say, I'm just going to ink it and then I'll release it black and white?
No, I'm usually involving a colorist early on. I pay she knows that I only have scraps to pay at first.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I get the advance is when I give the full payment.
Gotcha.
So like in Jacobot's case, I'm waiting on Scholastic, and so I won't pull the trigger on the rest of the color on the book until I know what that deal is. But I'm pretty sure I would pay her full rate, and there might be some negotiating that down, if I'm doing it on the web or something. But I also do things like if a movie deal goes through, I pay my colorist a bonus.
Mm-hmm.
Just on my own, I just feel like if it goes through, they earn it, even though they're not an official partner on the project. But I'll do that,
right?
Because I want them to know, like, I'm here to take care of them too, if anything ever happens.
And they're part of why it might have resonated as well.
Absolutely.
Hooked up in the door.
Yep.
It's interesting to be thinking through all these things again, because these were, Stephen could tell you, this was stuff like we all sat around and debated, like, how do we approach this? And then when I made Adamsville 1, I was like, I'm finishing this series whether we ever get a publisher or not. So I haven't been thinking about the pitching process in years, and now I'm trying to think through it again and trying to find some way to do a hybrid of things where I'm trying to get people involved early, but I'm also going to do it whether they're there or not. Or
yeah, I think that's a good plan. What you've got is fine. It doesn't sound that doesn't sound crazy to me.
Okay.
I think it's kind of interesting because I think we finally earned the right to talk about it. Because I think for a while it was like, how do we get our stuff, how do we get our stuff into a publisher? But then the real question was, have you actually finished something? Is what we eventually ended on is like, have we actually done something?
Right.
And then we kind of landed on this mantra of like, finish the book. And so, and so now you've made 3 books. And so it's like, okay, now we get to ask the question of like, okay, well, how do we start getting people interested in this? Because I think a lot of artists, especially when they're first starting out, they put the cart before the horse, and they're kind of like, I'm gonna try to get pitched, and I got this agent lined up, and it's like, well, how many pages of comics have you done? Well, I've done 3 pages and a treatment. It's like, whoa, you got a lot ahead of you.
Right.
So. Because they think the reason why they can't do a book is because they don't have an agent or because they don't have a publishing deal.
Right.
Yeah, that was
just never my experiences. Instead, something else is going on for why you're not making a book. And it's because you won't make one.
Yeah. And like Josh and I were chatting about this last night about like how different our perspectives are now that we're 6 years into this. And, like before it felt like such like, and this is going to sound weird, but I don't mean it as a detrimental thing at all, but it was like, before it was like, man, if you got like a deal with the publisher, you've arrived and everything's different.
Yeah.
And now I'm sort of like, no, it just means I worked really hard and they liked what I did. And,
yeah,
it's become much more just grounded as this experience of like, I'm just going to work hard and hope people, I guess jaded's a little bit, maybe the word I'm thinking of. It's not quite as out there and untouchable now. It's like, I just know the work that's involved and that it's,
and you're more aware probably that a publisher needs you as much as you need them. We need publishers to do what they do. But man, they need a good story and they love it. They love good stories. The people in this business that I've met, I do think if they didn't like something about my work, if they didn't like the story, there probably is something seriously wrong with it that I need to rethink, because they really have good instincts on stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I think it's also confidence. I know they're going to see a good story when I show them my stuff. I just think one thing I know how to do is tell a story.
Right.
I think what's made me, because it's funny, like it's like you said, Michael, it's kind of jaded, but it's also kind of like a little bit more mature as far as professionalism.
Yeah.
And I think what brought me to being more jaded / mature was kind of getting burned early on by a publisher.
Yeah.
And I've heard that like every creator has that. And I think for you, Michael, you're going to kind of entirely skip that first burning, but like I think I've heard that most.
It'll come.
Yeah. But I wonder, like Daniel and Doug, like, do you guys have that story where you're like, I was a young kid and I got a deal with so and so, and then they took all of my stuff? The end. Like, is that, because I definitely have one of those stories, and it's been really formative for me, both as a cartoonist and kind of as a person.
I mean, I didn't get a good deal on that. I basically gave it away, on a real naive deal that if I did it now, I'd never have to work again. But at the same time, Earthworm Jim has opened every door for me since. So it's not like there was nothing to glean from that. It was a hard lesson, but bad stuff doesn't come from telling good stories. So even when it's a rip-off deal, it's like, haha, you win, but haha, I won too.
I was lucky. I had I only had one publishing deal so far in my life. Well, the original deal for my original work, has been licensed since then, but the initial deal from the German publisher, I was lucky that the publisher was totally on my side, extremely on my side. Later on, I realized that they actually paid me much more than would have been reasonable from a business standpoint.
Yeah, that's very nice.
But the thing that I would, where I would chime in is the idea of this kind of disillusionment that you arrive at when you like make a publishing deal, and which up to that point has been your big benchmark, your big milestone thing. Like you said, you always think that you have arrived at some special point when you reach that point. And for me, it was very sobering to realize as soon as I got in contact with the publishing world and started to talk to people and started to talk to other authors and stuff like that, it was very sobering for me to find out that here in Germany, on our market, there actually is no business model for creating comics. So even if you have a publishing deal, it normally means that you will have a deal that will in the end sell between 3,000 and 5,000 copies. Normally, the first imprint of your book does not even cover your advance. So the advance that you get, that might be something between 5,000 or 8,000 euros, is everything you will ever get from a book. And this is and that only if it really sells well. So it can totally happen. I mean, that's the thing. It's very, very rare that the advances that the publishers might give an author would actually be recouped by the sales. So you will normally never see something like royalties after that, because they just will never eat up your advance in the normal case. And
that makes sense.
And that's was very sobering for me, because in my case, I'm actually the ideal case where I'm writer and illustrator in one person. So I can make full use of that budget. But even then, it is not even close to the production costs that you would have for a book. And if I think about teams of writers and illustrators that have to split that in half, there's simply no business model for this. There is no way to recoup the money that you invest into creating a comic, and that's listening to you talking about the approach. From my point of view, there's just no choice. If you want to have a book, you just have to make it. And if a publisher picks it up and a few thousand books land on the market, that is a nice add-on for you. But essentially, you have to find other ways to use your work and to monetize your work and stuff like that. So, yeah,
that's very sobering.
Yeah.
Well, I was talking to my wife recently about this, and I kind of, when I got out of college and got my first job, I always, like, in the beginning of my adulthood, if I were to have gotten some of the advances and stuff that were going around with publishers, it would have been able to become my full-time job. But now with 3 kids and all these other things, like, I looked at my wife and I was like, is it bad that I feel like that might just be almost impossible now? Like, barring some major event like a Hollywood deal that's crazy money or something, it just sort of feels like this will always be a thing I've got to figure out how to do in the after hours or something.
That's more my experience too.
Sorry to interrupt, but that's something that I also realized. Okay, the moment I realized that the publishing thing might not be the big leap or the big goal, of course your mind wanders over to the whole Hollywood thing. And you think, okay, if it's not the book that I have to score, well, then I have to score the movie. And that might be the big thing. And I remember watching an interview, a cool interview with Mike Mignola and his wife, actually. It was very enjoyable because in our case, my wife is also helping me with maintaining the online shop and stuff like that. And it seems to be pretty much the same over at the Mignolas. And the way they talked about it, and he obviously had several movies, well, at least 2. The way they talked, it did not sound that they have arrived at some magical place where they can just do anything they want. It sounded more like, okay, when the movie deal was done, we had a couple of good years. And then it's basically over. You're back at the ground level again and have to see what you can do with your books from that point on.
Yeah.
Because I don't know to whom I talked. It I don't know. Maybe one of you has more insights into that too. But what I heard was that if you make a movie deal and it's not something like the option that if you're lucky gets renewed every year or something like that, but when the movie gets produced, there is a certain amount of money that is allocated from the production sum, like 2% or 3%, I don't know, that is going to the author.
Yeah, that's true.
And well, you can do the math. You might end up with a couple of $10,000 depending on the budget. But if you look at it and I'm just doing, right at the moment I'm doing my bookkeeping, my monthly bookkeeping, because it's the end of the month. And the truth is, I'm burning through between 50 and 60,000 euros every year with a family of 4. And let's say you get $100,000 from a movie deal. That means you've got like 2 extra years.
Yep.
And that's it. And not to say that this wouldn't be cool, but it's not like you're a millionaire and you can do from that point on, you can do what you want.
I've made $1 million on a book deal and I wasn't a millionaire.
Yeah, I was going to say I was going to throw it back to you, Doug, because I know you've had that.
Yeah, and it is true what Daniel said about the option thing, that most of my works, they're sold outright. If there's multiple people bidding on them, then usually they have to buy it to take it off the table. And that's when the price goes up, because now you're talking well over, they're doing six-figure deals then, as opposed to options that are usually pretty cheap. And I've done 2 options too of my 6 works that I've sold into Hollywood. So or 7 works. So that is the only money I ever made off my books, was really off the movie deal. But that just means, I'm here to tell those stories, and the Hollywood deal may never come. It usually doesn't, right? Unless you're very lucky, and I've been very lucky sometimes, but it's not like I can count on that. We send some of my best books out to Hollywood and there's 0 response. They're just like,
yeah,
we'd never make this. So where's the business at? In the end, I have to keep making the book, and it's about the book first. And until the book exists, there will be no movie deal. And then if the book exists, there might be one. But that gnawing.
But at least you have a book.
Yeah, it never goes. I'm working on going to start my 18th graphic novel after I finish all these watercolors, and it's box office poison. I mean, it's not a movie. The book I'm going to make, I don't think, is very movie friendly, and Scholastic really wants to publish it. They already got that pitch from me. That one,
yeah,
they really want to do. So
I think
you came one of the toughest books I ever make.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I just think that if you're a storyteller, then remember what your number one job is to tell a story. And I don't even want to be a businessman either. And that's always been the thing that bit me in the butt. And it's the thing I enjoy the least about all of this, is the money side of it. Because we all started drawing before we made money at it. So that's a marriage that happens first. So you've all earned your comeuppance. And then when you turn it into a business, if it's just a business, then it really will quickly turn into prostitution and something that you don't love. It's something that you're just bought, right?
Right.
And I always want to go back to that inner, the child that fell in love with drawing is why I'm here making comics, because I loved comics as a kid first. Secondarily, how can I maximize the money I make off this to pay for my family? Mm-hmm. And that's much harder, and it's almost none of my business how that happens. It's like I do my best. I don't always make money. I don't often make money. Most of my money, I think, is behind me and not in front of me.
It's funny that the Chelly had a question she wanted us to get to, but I wanted to comment on that because this is where it freed me up so much to have that conversation with my wife and feel completely content with it. I was thinking about the life of Paul the Apostle, in particular, and we often think about our calling in the terms of vocation. So, like, how am I making my living? And that's not what your calling is. Your calling, you do it whether you do or not. And so, like, I look at someone like the life of Paul. Well, all day he made tents, and then when he got done with tent making, then he went around and preached in the synagogues and whatever. And
he wrote 2/3 of the New Testament was what he was remembered for, not so much his tent brand.
Yeah, and realizing that all my responsibility is, like you've been saying, Doug, is just if I feel like I'm put on this earth to tell stories, go tell the stories.
That's right.
And let the rest of the business figure itself out.
That's number one.
And then I'll say I fulfilled my calling, because I did what I felt like I was put on this planet to do, and I can't control much else beyond my ability just to create the work and hope it turns out well.
We don't want to believe in the calling because we don't want to take away all of our excuses. As soon as it's like about me getting an agent or not, I have an excuse. But if it's a calling, then I have no excuse. Like I gotta go do it. And suddenly I'm not a victim anymore. I'm the worst problem. My problems are me.
Yeah.
Not a publisher and not an agent or the world.
I think
it's me.
I think a big milestone for me was getting to the place where I realized, like, I just finally grappled with the reality that comics might not be my source of income for the rest of my life.
That's right.
And that was really hard to admit to myself, that I wasn't either I wasn't good enough, or the market wasn't right, or it just didn't happen in general. But it is freeing too, knowing that, like, hey, the skills that I've developed in this time that I've got to be a professional cartoonist, I can use the rest of my life to continue telling these stories. And so that's kind of a win. But I have grappled with the fact of, like, yeah, it might not work out. Like, in spite of all this quote unquote success, it might not work out. And if I have to go get a job to support my family, it's okay. I'm still going to make comics. I'm still going to draw.
And if anything, pulling the pressure off of it is actually really helpful. Like I feel fortunate that I've landed a position at my company now where I don't hate going into work every day. So I'm like, I'm gonna go do my job, and then I have all this pressure off my shoulders just to go tell whatever story I want when I leave at the end of the day. And then hopefully I've done a good enough job that people like it. Like, I still look at it and thank God for things like Kickstarter and such, because 6-7 years before all this would have happened, it would have been much more difficult. But even as a self-published project, I've made as much money from Adamsville than what I could have hoped for from a basic advance from most publishers. As a self-published product.
Absolutely, because you're not borrowing from yourself when you get paid on Kickstarter. You are when you get an advance, you're borrowing from yourself.
Yep.
You're lending yourself money, and you have to pay it back. Every advance, that's what it is. Including even to give you a $250,000 advance, you're borrowing it from yourself.
Yeah.
I think the question that Chili wanted to do was
the one from Matthew. You want me to read it, or you got it? I got it pulled up. All right.
Okay.
The question in the chat was, while plot ideas are not precious, what if you want to express while plot ideas are not precious, what if you want to express a deep message? How to craft a story while holding on to a truth, while holding loosely to the manifestation of that truth?
I have so many thoughts and opinions about this.
I know, right? Same.
Yeah.
Same.
I thought about this a lot. So I don't even know where to start the conversation, really.
I can bridge into it just by talking about the things I struggle with in finishing Adamsville with the conclusion, because I knew that I was going to be dipping my toes into some pretty religiously philosophical things by the end of the whole story. And I felt like expressing a deep message, I think, is keeping in mind, for me, it was keeping in mind that people are coming to my book for entertainment primarily. So be entertaining, but then also don't dumb it down. So I tried to make sure that there was a deep message, that there was stuff for people to go through and to dig in and to mine into. So I almost feel like I can't tell a story unless there's a deep message, to be honest. Like, otherwise it's just events happening.
All stories are deep messages. So that's the core.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the answer to that question does kind of come down to this understanding of story, because if you were to these ideas aren't mine. I'm trying to remember who it was, though. It was some pastor philosopher guy. I'll try to remember. But anyway, at the most basic definition of what a story is, it's you have somebody who wants something, and there are obstacles in the way of that thing, and they have to overcome the obstacles to get the thing. And so that in itself, that story is how religion works. It's how worldviews work. It's how our own personal philosophies work. We decide, hey, I want this thing. And then we go, what's stopping me from getting that thing? And then, like, is this thing actually good? And yes, it is, or no, it isn't. And then you try to go get that thing, and then you either get it or you don't get it. That's so basic to human thought. You can't really have thought without story. And because it within that whole thing is like, here's what is good and bad. That's wrapped up in the question of what we want, and here's how to get it is wrapped up in the question of, like, what's in our way. And so I think a lot of times, if you have a message you're passionate about and you want to create a story that kind of broadcasts that message, it can create a story that's really heavy. And the reason for that is because like we said, stories are inherent with meaning. And so if you're crushing meaning into it, you're looking kind of at the wrong end of the pipe. And I've noticed that if I tell a great story, the message will, my own personal values will inevitably come out. They can't not come out.
Yep.
Of the story.
True.
Yeah, you didn't get into storytelling to say nothing.
Yep.
Right.
And isn't it that sometimes you write your story in order to figure it out for yourself? I mean,
yeah, I think a lot.
It's not like you have this super clear vision of a very important message. I often have the impression that it's more like you have a very clear question in your mind, and you start writing your story and try to look closer at this question. You throw your characters towards that question, and you get the answers through letting them act out what they most likely would do in those situations. So you find your meaning through the storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the basic. That right there is the basis for extremely honest storytelling. And I think it's important because if you have kind of a message you want to say, it's really easy for the story to turn dogmatic in a way because you're not willing to represent the opposing view of that message.
Right.
Whereas for me, like with Spaceboy, the reason that and again, this was totally unconscious and it was unintended, but I explored my doubts about God through Spaceboy. It was kind of me going like, is God really there? Is there really meaning in the world? Like, or is there just a great nothing in the world? Is it all kind of just an illusion or a kind of a fabrication that we've made? And that's a question that really bothers me sometimes. It really bothers me. And so, I think people sense that when I'm wrestling through the characters to try to, find the truth of it, and while holding on to hope, I guess, is another important thing, because I think some authors go the opposite direction. That they'll say, I'm out to portray this gritty world, and I'll portray it as it is, and there's a sense there that really disturbs me, because for a while I'm totally into it. I'm like, wow, this is actually really gripping and really honest. But then they don't have hope, and ultimately they're saying, yeah, this is how the world is. There's nothing we can do about it, and that's the end. And so this is where the mystery lies, is that at least me as a storyteller, I'm trying to create like the fictional part of my story, the thing that people might call fiction, is the hope. Like, I'm dealing with gritty reality, but I'm also doing it in a way of like, no, isn't there something out there in the beyond? Like, yeah, my words are starting to break down, but I hope you guys understand what I'm saying. Like, there's yeah.
And I don't mind dogma, and I don't mind preaching. We can think of stories that are full of dogma and preaching that you see or read. If I'm going to tell a story about why slavery is wrong, do I really have to come up with this amazing argument for why slavery is right just to appear to be balanced? I mean, what's the best argument I'm going to give on that? Or racism is actually right? It's like I can tell a dogmatic story about racism, and I can tell a dogmatic story about how Jesus is the only way. It's like you can stake a claim. That's what's so weird about story is it's a medium where it can be about anything. And to me, a good story isn't one that is balanced on both sides. People will always say, oh, your bad guy has to have a believable motive and all this stuff. But I've seen tons of great stories where the bad guy had a totally unbelievable motive.
Yeah.
or there is no bad guy, or you know what I mean. The stories can take on any form, and you have permission to do anything you want to do. And if you look around and say, "Oh, but no one liked it," people don't like a lot of things that are true. Moby Dick fell out. It never sold out of its first print run. The greatest American novel. All of my comics have sold more in their first print run than Moby Dick did in Melville's life. So does that tell you that Moby Dick shouldn't have been told, or that Melville died thinking he might have written a mediocre book?
Wow.
It's like, just tell your story, do it right by what you know to be a good story. And I wouldn't look back. And I think there's a cultural pressure where we try to make people tell a story that's more approvable by culture. It's like, oh, it's got to have these rules. It's got to have this 3-act structure, or your bad guy has to be this, or you have to really bury the preaching or whatever.
The cast has to look a certain way.
Yeah, none of that's true. It has to look a certain way. None of it's true.
That's become a new one. It's the sort of like, just we're starting to put these boxes around things, and have to be careful because it stirs up conversations that I don't intend to be getting myself into. But this sort of like rule making, and I'm definitely in the camp that says the more I've learned about story structure, it's been helpful in me helping tell a story. But what's been unhelpful is sort of been the conversation about, well, you need to include, people that look a certain way, ideas that are a certain thing.
Yeah.
And there's sort of become this religion around what our stories have to be this, otherwise they're not acceptable to society.
Yeah.
That's something I'm seeing happening a lot.
It is true. It is true that if you want a publisher, and a publisher has a certain leaning, then you put those leanings in the book and you'll more likely get a publisher.
Right.
But even that, you can see the pitfalls of that, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's just even, I mean, I don't know. There's something in the culture right now that it just feels like there's becoming conversations around topics that have less to do with telling good stories and more to do with pushing agendas. And it's
like female empowerment, or have this certain amount of diversity in your stories. And
I got into trouble with that one.
Just for the sake, I wouldn't fight it for the sake of fighting it, but I'm just saying that's just peer pressure of your culture speaking. Your culture is strangely illiterate for our times, and don't let it ruin your story, but always consider your culture.
It's funny. I got into kind of a back and forth with some folks on Twitter and Facebook, and I know maybe diverging off this path a little bit, but I saw a headline that was a shot of, it was Rey from Star Wars, and it said, everybody has the right to see themselves represented in Hollywood blockbusters. Yeah. And I sort of tweeted that out, and I was like, that's not a right, though. Like, you don't have a right to see yourself represented. There's a responsibility of creators to tell good stories that represent people of diversity. But also, there's also a place for decidedly non-diverse storytelling. Like, if I think of something like Black Panther, that is not a diverse story, and it shouldn't be. It's a decidedly African story, and it should feel totally comfortable staying that way. And there should not be a pressure with, like, I want stories like Boys in the Hood and things like that show me an experience that I cannot relate to because my life doesn't have that inclusivity. Or I've never been through that. Do you think
that girl who played Rey, do you think she meant to have a butt-kicking Mormon in a story, because Hollywood hates Mormons? I'm just saying, where's the Scientologist as a star, a superstar butt kicker? You know what I mean? We all know what key groups they're pushing. They don't mean true diversity. They mean just follow this flavor today. And fine, you can. And I would do it if it was part of a story. I would never do it because then what if you crossed all those T's and dotted all those I's and your story stunk and nothing came of it, and you spent the whole year selling out to your culture, and you had nothing to show for it, which is probably more likely to happen.
Well, like, even in the wake of like all this celebration on something like Black Panther, there was even an article that came out that said, I guess some LGBT activist groups were mad because they didn't include them in Black Panther. Yeah. And I'm just like, why are we mad about everything? Like, we just... I've stood next to authors talking to editors, and they lead into, they don't tell, they're talking to about like, well, here's the story I'm working on, and then the story they're talking about isn't a story. They're just talking about the like gender group identities of people, and like that's not a story. Like I have no problem with the diversity and all that stuff, but it should be in service to the story,
Yeah.
and then I can buy into your worldview. But and I think all this comes around just in discussing deeper meanings is we should just tell good stories and
Right.
and
Yeah.
and not feel like you have to keep that you have to get totally boxed in by fear of other people, I guess. I don't know. But
Yeah.
like I know too, there's an interesting conversation going on with something like even The Last Jedi, that where people have taken meaning that I don't think the movie intended, that I also think the movie is promoting without intention, which is like
Yeah.
there's sort of people who are saying, well, it's really about female empowerment and it's putting down men, and I'm like, I really don't think that's what the writer meant, but I definitely understand your viewpoint of why you think it's there. And so there's also some caution of having unintended messages come across that you never meant in the first place. At least I would like to believe that they weren't trying to put down a specific gender for the course of their movie.
Yeah, and
just trying to tell a good story.
In Tommysaurus Rex, I did. It's loosely, there's a Christ allegory to it. It's also a boy and his dog. And when Universal bought it, they're like, this is the greatest story because it really condemns the war in Iraq that we're going through. And I just looked at it and said, I didn't see that. And I made it.
Wow.
So I'm not trying to tell people what they will or won't take out of my stories either, because I take a lot of stuff out of, say, Pulp Fiction or something that I think is really beautiful and an amazing a change of humanity that, you know, it doesn't keep it from being foul or whatever, but I can find lots of great messages in things that are personal to me that I know the author didn't intend, but they don't get to say why I like or don't like something.
Right.
And I don't get to do that for my audience either. And talk about the diversity thing. I did a book tour once with Regina, and everyone was like, "Ooh, you have a gay thing in drama," and of course there's all these Sunday school types, for which I'm one of them, but they were coming up and condemning it, going like this, there needs to be a parental warning on the cover. And I can't tell you how many emails I get from people about newts, liberals, who say like there needs to be a parental warning about the amount of violence in this, and there's actual death in it. So it's like everyone's just trying to put their personal views on your story. And if you're the author, then you are God of that story, and you do it right. And I don't really care what the pieces fall. The comics is the wrong place to sell out anyways, because like we've said, you're probably not going to make money at it. So why sell out at something that isn't going to bring you fame? You're not going to be famous.
Right.
And largely you're not going to make that much money on it. So the only thing you're going to be able to do is sleep at night knowing that you're proud of your story.
Right.
I think that kind of distills and crystallizes like the whole conversation we've been having is like, you're not going to make money at comics. So why are you doing it? It better be for a pretty good reason.
Yeah.
It's a rough thing to say, but no, that is how the math works out. You're probably not. And I think it's a similar thing for
the messaging. I've done very Christian books, and the Christian audience just completely ignored them. So even then, it's like, well, they didn't show up. My people didn't show up and pay me a bunch of money and give me a bunch of fame. So, I hope I better have believed in that project, because even my own people don't support me necessarily.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't have people in my pocket other than people that like good stories. People like Doug TenNapel stories, man. And I get all kinds. One of my biggest fans is a lesbian couple, and they'll buy anything I make and totally support it and tweet about it. And I have a Mormon family. I'm not a Mormon. Don't approve. I have all kinds of people that just dig my work, and they're very different from me. And I'm so I'm so proud of that because it means my stories are working. My stories are good.
The night the Webtoons episode went up, that I kind of revealed the more religiousy aspects of Adamsville, I went to bed like so nervous because I knew by the time I woke up that morning, several thousand people will have read it, and I was like, this is the moment where I'm either going to lose them or I got them, you know.
Yeah.
And it was actually talking to Jason who really encouraged me, because I was like, I don't know, I feel like maybe I should scale some of this back. And he was like, I bet if you did it, you'd be surprised, like how many people would like it. Yeah. And it's all in the way you communicate it too. But I woke up that morning and like all the comments were just like, wow, this is awesome. I didn't see this. And I was like, oh my gosh. Like, and I think as long as you're not being a condescending jerk, you can get away with a lot of things.
Yeah.
You know, or at least, or it fits your story well.
I'm a condescending jerk. It's not my story.
Or if the story works, and then I think as long as it doesn't break your story logic, people are like, okay, I'm in. You know, cool, we'll go there.
And I'm actually thinking back to what Doug said about like you really can't decide what people will take away from your work. I mean, we do know that storytelling is powerful and that it changes people, but we really aren't. Yeah. We aren't that powerful just as creators to have some. We can't like dominate someone with a message and control them, and we shouldn't. Right. Like we kind of create. We don't really send a message as much as we create a headspace, and what they take from that is like, because I was realizing now, like I think someone emailed me a while back and said that their comic like helped them come out as a bisexual, or my comic, helped them come out.
Did your comic,
which was really surprising,
Steve, as a bisexual?
No, help them come out.
Oh,
help them come out. No, but yeah, so which was really surprising to me, because I'm in my headspace. I'm like, oh yeah, this is a comic about whether God exists, whether meaning exists, like what's out there, and they kind of took what they would from it, and so ultimately, yeah, like I think as a result, we put a lot of pressure on ourselves, and this is in both whatever community you're in, whether it's liberal or conservative community. They put a lot of pressure, especially in America. They put a lot of pressure on themselves to put a message into a story and kind of send it out. Like it's almost like a new form of social justice warfare, kind of like. Yeah. I'm going to create something that carries a message and send it out there.
That's when it's propaganda, not when it's a message, but when it has to be this perfect message and it has to be perfectly packaged by our culture's language, or we will destroy it. Mm-hmm. That's when I start smelling propaganda. And even then, some of those stories are pretty good. I mean, I watched Thelma and Louise, and I don't necessarily agree with it, but I think it's a fantastic way to tell that story. Like, I can respect it as a story, even if I don't agree with a lot of the messages. I go, wow, that's good artistry, that's good storytelling, good character work. And I don't agree with the message.
That would need us all. That would mean we'd all have to be more accepting of worldviews we don't agree with. Yeah, yeah. Which is a challenge. It feels like a challenge nowadays. But, I don't know, it is a fascinating conversation. Like but it is hard to like wrap your arms around it, because literally, like, you're going to do your job, you're going to work hard, you're going to tell your story, you're going to put it out into the world, and then like your audiences are going to do with it what they're going to do with it. Either going to agree with your message, not agree with your message. Someone won't even recognize you had a message, or they'll take your message to mean some other thing and run off in this direction with it.
Yeah.
And I like what you said, Doug. I think it's just at the end of the day, can you lay your head down going, I did the best I could, and to tell a good story.
I made a book. Yep. I made a good story. This is my first job.
I did what I was supposed to do.
Yeah. Yeah. That's all I want to do.
Yep.
Dan, you have any thoughts on all that?
Let me see if there's any more questions in the chat.
Daniel's just been hanging out on this one.
It's really fascinating. It's really a fascinating conversation. And I'm kind of watching it from the sideline, because a lot of the things you're talking about are so very specific to American culture, So some of these things leave me wondering, and on the other hand, of course, it is the culture that everyone here over in Europe basically grew up with, because we didn't counter it with our own, especially talking about film and pop culture and stuff like that. What comes over from over the ocean, so to say, it's so overwhelming that it can't be really countered by our own stuff. It's so we receive it, we take it as part of our cultural identity. But on the other hand, there's this disturbing element where you feel that there's stuff happening, and I'm getting very, very abstract now. There's stuff happening in this cultural influence that you cannot fully relate to, because it is not from your home base, so to say.
Yeah,
I don't know how to phrase it.
I think that, correct me if I'm wrong, Daniel, because obviously you live there, but I would imagine that a lot of the conversations we're having as a culture, Germany probably went through long before we have had these conversations. And so maybe it's just the difference in the way our culture is grappling with issues, where maybe different than the way your culture is grappling with it, because maybe you've all moved on from it, where we're still fighting with it.
No,
I don't know. Would that be inaccurate? Or
I don't know.
What about the debate on illegal aliens in Germany? The idea of German or Western culture versus Islamists moving into the country and reproducing in the idea of open borders. I know that's a hot European topic. Like, if you made a book on one side or the other of that debate, wouldn't you unleash some kind of a criticism or followers or debate if it was on immigration?
I think that it's probably the biggest topic right now in Europe, and I'm kind of I'm kind of happy that I actually, in my own story, I have actually implemented that aspect without actually knowing that it would become such a hot topic. But it is there, and now that I know that it is there, and now that every new day, with every new day of the debate in politics, more aspects get into this conversation, I know that it will influence my story, because I have in my story, I have the minority that is put under pressure, and that will get put under more pressure as the things unfold. But just to come back to what Michael asked, the thing is, you might think that we Europeans with a long history, centuries and stuff, would have figured some stuff out, and that's. But the thing is, I think over in America, you just created problems or ideas or questions that never arose here in Europe. It just never happened. And this is the fascinating thing. So here in Europe, let's take the slavery issue, for example. And I know from a historic standpoint, you would say it's actually a European thing, because it was all started in the colonial times and stuff like that. So it's basically it has been Europeans that started all this slave trade over the oceans and stuff like that. But it's very much in everyone's conscious. It's very much an American theme, maybe because it culminated at a point when America was its own country and its own identity. It was separated from Europe already. And I think every spot on Earth has its specific theme. Obviously, here in Germany, we have the Second World War and the horrible role that our country played in that story. And so this is the big story here. And I think with the immigration, this is the first. Well, maybe that's too naive to say, but it is definitely a big European story. It is a story where no country in Europe can isolate itself, because we are basically, the frontiers are open, and we have to think about these topics in a European scale, not in separate nations. Yeah.
It's so cool having you on the chat, Daniel, because it's like so refreshing to see, like, we're just gonna step outside of our box for a second and like just hear it from a different perspective.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
Hey guys, I hate to kind of leave, but I'm meeting some folks for dinner tonight. But good discussion today. We went deep.
Yeah, and I actually have to stick to my promise that I would go to bed early a little bit today, so I will bail out too. But it has really been a super interesting conversation, and I actually can't wait for next Wednesday.
Yeah,
it's so fun.
Yeah.
Hey, Jason. Bye, Jason.
Yeah, I'm gonna say.
Can you guys recap it all for me?
Yeah.
We talked about religion,
We solved all the world's
diversity.
problems.
Yeah.
We solved all the problems.
We covered a lot of stuff today, man.
Cool. I can't wait to listen
mostly
to it.
about your bedwetting, Jason. This is an intervention.
They make diapers for that.
I'm glad you guys were able to stream even though I was driving. This is good.
Yeah.
Are you in the hotel?
Yeah, we're finally in the hotel now, so not much action.
On ECC, are you setting up a table?
Yeah, we're gonna probably as soon as this is done, we'll probably go and set up everything. We have to set up today, and then it starts tomorrow. It's a full day tomorrow, and it's 4 full days. Yeah, pretty much, which is crazy. So,
hey guys, I'm gonna sign out, but I'll listen to the rest.
All right, see ya.
See you guys.
Sell some books.
So what'd you say, Doug?
Are you ready to sell some books? Are you feeling all peppy?
I think so. I have 2 new books, so I think I'm ready for it.
And how did you get, just for the nuts and bolts of it, how did you get your stock in?
Well, we drove, so it's in the back of our truck right now.
And is the Teamster, do the unions let you wheel your own stock in, move it in?
Yeah, it's just us. So I have a little cart. We'll roll it all in, and it'll take a couple hours to set it up. And this is my brother, Martin.
Martin, hello.
And his daughter behind him, Sawyer.
Hi, Sawyer.
So yeah, it's just us. We'll just be working it, setting it up today, and taking turns talking to people all weekend.
All right, now what's your goal? Is it to meet publishers or big people, or is it to just to move books? Are you trying to make money?
It's kind of I don't really know yet, and that's why I don't do a whole lot of conventions. But at first I wanted to just move books and get a new audience, but I don't think that conventions really grow your audience as fast as just being online, like just doing this stuff. Yeah. And so then it turned into like, well, I want to make money, but with shows like this, you got to make like $4,000 or $3,000 to cut even, to break even.
Yeah, if I may, what's your booth run?
I don't remember. I think it's over 1,000 this year. I paid for it, several months ago. So, and I think it finally went over 1,000. So, and then the hotels, another $800 since we're staying for so many days now, because the convention's 4 days long plus a 5th day for setup.
So is your hope then to break even?
Yeah, I know I'll break even because I usually always do. It's just I would like to make money. I think this time especially I want to make money just because I wrapped up Webtoons, and so it's like I have to come home with something in my pocket,
Or Seeley's going to be on you.
That's right.
My girl Seeley.
So, yeah, this year it's a little more about the money, I think. But I don't know if I'll do Emerald City again next year, just because it's become too big. It's too much like, it's almost like San Diego Comic-Con now, which is just too
huge.
big.
I went there like 10 years ago, and it was huge.
Yeah. I was probably, the last time I went was when you were there too.
I was a guest. They flew me out. That's back when I was a famous guy, back when people paid to put me in cons. None of that.
You're not a movie star, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, not anymore.
Webtoons brought me out to I hadn't been to San Diego in like 6 years or something. So yeah, about similar time. But Webtoons brought me out last year with my wife, which was really cool. But it was so weird to see the transformation of the landscape. I think almost the only face that I saw that was like, oh, he's still doing this is Pascal Campion.
Yeah.
So you remember him? He's still working it down there.
Huh.
Yeah.
I'm like, you're still hanging on, but everyone else is gone. Like, but everyone from that kind of era, I guess. It's weird.
When I went back, it was back in 2011, I think was the last time. Ethan and I were both guests. And I sold a so-so amount of books. I did mostly Earthworm Jim commissions and made a little money. I don't remember having a booth. But afterwards, because we were guests, ECC flew us all of their guests out to Calgary to like a retreat. That is one of the coolest things I've ever done. Not Calgary. It's the big, what's the big resort up there? They have like a big lake and a big mountain. Yeah, it's like some kind of a Winnipeg or something. No, I don't know. It was some kind of it was a big deal. No, it was, yeah. And anyways, we ended up hanging out there, and I ended up getting to hang out with Mike Mignola, who's like my hero.
Oh wow!
And Scott Kurtz went, and Chris Straub, and man, it was one of the funnest times I ever had, and it was just really neat. I felt like I just owed those guys everything. Yeah, I got to hang out with all the guys that put on the con, and it was an amazing. We all just talked comics, and I would be able to sit down and just ask people. So, how do you make it? How do you do it? It was really neat. All right, well, Jason, give us a rundown next week of how it went.
Will do.
What happened, because that'll be a really cool episode.
Yeah, I will. Yes,
I will. Yeah,
I will. I'm going to sell my crochet collection.
Your what collection?
My crochet collection.
Your crochet collection? Good.
And I
get rid of.
Yep. Finally moved on from comics.
Finally dumped that macrame.
Say what?
Finally dump your macrame, your crochet macrame collection.
That's right.
All right. Looks like unless you have anything going, I got to jump. What do you any questions or anything, Jason, or any comments?
My computer here is such a piece of junk. I can't hardly do anything. So I'm not doing nothing. I can't look at comments. I can't. It's about ready to die right now. The battery's leaking acid.
Oh, good.
Well, it was a good. We need to. So, what's the official name of this chat?
I've been calling it Wednesday's virtual studio stream.
Virtual studio.
If you guys want to do something else, say something else, then I'm more than happy to.
I like virtual studio because it does feel like that.
Yeah,
I like virtual studio. I don't like the word stream. It makes me have to use the restroom.
Okay. It's only for young people.
Okay. Well, you guys can keep going. I'm going to jump. I think dinner's on for me. So
sounds good.
I guess a good place to call it.
I got to keep doing these tonight.
Sounds good. All right, Doug.
See you guys. God bless you.
Bye.
See ya.
All right. I'm going to take off as well.
Okay. Well, I come in and then it's over.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Michael already left. Well, I can't wait to see this chat once I get back home. I'm gonna listen to it.
Dude, we uncovered some intense stuff, and I'm impressed about how eloquent everybody is about cultural everything.
Good.
Yeah.
That's good.
All right.
Well, it's probably good that I wasn't in it then, because I'm not very eloquent at that stuff. All right, Stephen. Well, I'm going to sign off, and then maybe Shelly will sign off the official one.
All right.
I'll let her know.
Thanks, Shelly. You're the best. Thanks for running the chat today, or the everything.
The everything. Yeah, she took care of it. All right. See you guys.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.